What if I told you that a single weapon changed the course of the Battle of the Atlantic in 90 seconds? That German U-boat commanders, who had terrorized Allied convoys for years with near impunity, suddenly found themselves facing a silent predator that gave them no warning, no chance to dive deeper, and no time to escape. The Hedgehog Mortar system represents one of the most dramatic tactical shifts in naval warfare history. This isn't just a story about a weapon, it's about the men who operated it, the submariners who feared it, and the desperate innovation born from watching thousands of tons of Allied shipping disappear beneath the waves. Between 1940 and 1943, German U-boats sank over 14 million tons of Allied shipping, bringing Britain to the edge of starvation. Then came the Hedgehog, and suddenly, the hunters became the hunted. Today we're diving deep into the technological arms race beneath the Atlantic, where every innovation meant the difference between survival and a watery grave, where split-second decisions determined whether sailors saw their families again or joined the thousands already sleeping in Davy Jones's locker. The year is 1941. Britain stands alone against Nazi Germany, and the lifeline connecting her to survival stretches across 3,000 miles of hostile Atlantic water. Every convoy that departs from North America carries not just cargo but hope, food to feed a rationed population, oil to fuel the war machine, weapons to fight back against tyranny. And prowling in those dark waters, Admiral Karl Donitz's wolf packs circle like sharks, waiting to strike. The statistics were devastating. In 1942 alone, U-boats sank over 6 million tons of Allied shipping, more than could be replaced by all the shipyards in America and Britain combined. Merchant sailors faced worse odds than bomber crews. 1 in 4 never came home. The convoys sailed knowing that at any moment, a torpedo launched from an invisible enemy could tear through a ship's hull, sending men scrambling through darkness and flame toward a freezing ocean that gave them minutes to live. But here's the intriguing part. The weapon that would turn this tide of destruction wasn't conceived in some advanced laboratory or designed by brilliant scientists working in isolation. The Hedgehog was born from frustration, from the countless times destroyer crews watched U-boats slip away, from the rage of knowing the enemy was there, just beneath the surface, laughing at your impotence. To understand the Hedgehog, we must first understand the weapon it replaced, and why that weapon had become almost worthless. The depth charge seemed brilliant in theory. Drop a barrel of explosives set to detonate at a specific depth, catch the U-boat in the pressure wave, and crush its hull like an aluminum can. Simple, effective, devastating when it worked. But there was a fatal flaw. To drop depth charges, you had to sail directly over the submarine's last known position. That meant your sonar contact, the only way you knew where the enemy was, went dead at precisely the moment you needed it most. Imagine hunting in the dark, seeing your target in a flashlight beam, then being forced to turn off that light and guess where to shoot. That was depth charge warfare. U-boat commanders knew this weakness intimately. The moment they heard the destroyer's propellers overhead, they'd execute crash dives, change course, rig for silent running. By the time those depth charges exploded, they were already 300 feet away, slipping into the Atlantic's vast darkness, conserving their battery, waiting for another chance to kill. The year 1940 brought additional crisis. British naval engineers, watching Germany's magnetic mines devastate shipping, developed degaussing technology to protect ships from magnetic detonators. Then someone asked the dangerous question: if we can defeat magnetic detonators, what stops the Germans from doing the same with our depth charges? The answer was nothing. Enter Lieutenant Commander Charles Goodeve, a Canadian physicist who joined the Royal Navy's Department of Miscellaneous Weapons Development. Goodeve wasn't a career naval officer bound by tradition. He looked at the depth charge problem with fresh eyes and saw not a minor flaw, but a fundamental design failure. Why, he asked, are we attacking where the submarine was instead of where it is? The concept that emerged was revolutionary in its simplicity. Instead of dropping charges astern, fire them forward while maintaining continuous sonar contact. Instead of 1 or 2 explosives dropping at random, launch a pattern of 24 projectiles that would create an inescapable net of destruction. Instead of explosives that detonated on a timer, regardless of whether they found their target, use contact fuses that only exploded when they struck the submarine itself. That last innovation proved crucial. With depth charges, the ocean erupted regardless of success, creating massive disturbances that destroyed sonar contact for precious minutes. With Hedgehog, Silence after launch meant a miss, but an explosion meant confirmed destruction. No more guessing. Either the submarine died or the hunt continued. The Hedgehog embodied a philosophy that extended far beyond naval warfare, the principle that contact equals victory, that eliminating uncertainty changes everything. Each Hedgehog round weighed 65 pounds, carried 35 pounds of Torpex explosive, and could punch through a submarine's pressure hull like tissue paper. The warhead was specifically designed to detonate only on direct contact with a submarine's steel hull, not on impact with the ocean floor or random wreckage. This created psychological warfare of a particularly terrifying kind. German submariners, who'd grown accustomed to the rolling thunder of depth charge patterns, who'd learned to gauge their distance from death by counting explosions, suddenly faced something far worse: silence. That silence meant the destroyer still had them on sonar, still knew exactly where they were, and could fire again and again while tracking their every desperate maneuver. The silence meant they might never hear their death coming. The mathematics were brutally efficient. 24 projectiles launched in an elliptical pattern 200 feet forward of the attacking ship, each following a ballistic trajectory within a spread approximately 120 feet in diameter. If the submarine was within that kill zone when the projectiles arrived, at least one would strike home. That single contact detonation was usually enough. Submarines are fundamentally fragile, steel tubes designed to withstand external pressure, not internal explosions. A Hedgehog warhead breaching the hull meant catastrophic flooding, instant loss of depth control, and frequently the detonation of the submarine's own torpedoes. But here's where the story transcends simple technological superiority and enters the realm of tactical revolution. The Hedgehog didn't just give destroyers a better weapon, it completely changed how they hunted. Previously, anti-submarine warfare followed a predictable pattern: detect, approach, lose contact, guess, attack, search for debris, hope you got lucky. The U-boat had multiple opportunities to escape during this sequence. With Hedgehog, the sequence became detect, approach while maintaining constant contact, fire while still tracking, analyze results instantly, fire again if necessary. The U-boat's window of opportunity to escape collapsed from minutes to seconds. Evasive maneuvers that once meant salvation now merely delayed the inevitable. The implementation of Hedgehog across the Allied fleet transformed the Battle of the Atlantic's brutal calculus. Between 1941 and 1943, conventional depth charge attacks achieved kills in approximately 6% of engagements. 6%. For every 17 U-boats detected and attacked, only one died. These odds meant U-boats could be aggressive, could take risks, could surface to charge batteries with relative confidence. Hedgehog changed those odds overnight. Ships equipped with the weapon system achieved kill rates exceeding 24%, 4 times more effective than depth charges. More importantly, those odds improved with experience. Skilled operators who understood sonar tracking and projectile ballistics pushed success rates above 30%. Nearly 1 in 3 attacks now resulted in confirmed kills. The implications rippled through both fleets. For Allied convoy escorts, Hedgehog provided something beyond mere effectiveness. It offered hope. Destroyer crews who'd spent months watching merchant ships burn while their depth charges accomplished nothing suddenly possessed a weapon that worked. The frustration, the sense of impotence, the rage at being unable to protect the men they'd sworn to defend, all of it transformed into deadly competence. Morale soared. Aggression increased. For German submariners, the psychological impact proved equally devastating. U-boat crews were volunteers, elite sailors who'd undergone rigorous training and selection. They accepted danger as the price of their warrior status. But the Hedgehog introduced something more insidious than danger. It introduced helplessness. There was no tactical response to a weapon that tracked you continuously and attacked from beyond visual range. You couldn't shoot back. You couldn't maneuver effectively. You couldn't even know with certainty whether the attack had failed until enough time had passed to convince yourself you'd survived. The stories from German survivors reveal the psychological toll. One U-boat commander, rescued after his vessel was destroyed by a Hedgehog attack off the coast of Ireland, described the experience as being hunted by a ghost that knew our every move, that waited with infinite patience for the perfect moment to strike. The tactical doctrine surrounding Hedgehog employment evolved rapidly. Early attacks often failed because operators attempted to fire too quickly before establishing a solid tracking solution. Experience taught patience, That extra minute spent confirming the target's course and speed meant the difference between a perfect firing solution and wasted ammunition. Successful commanders developed almost artistic skill in reading sonar returns, distinguishing between false echoes and genuine contacts, predicting enemy maneuvers based on subtle changes in signature. Yet for all its effectiveness, the Hedgehog wasn't universally beloved, at least not initially. Many traditional naval officers viewed it with suspicion, even hostility. Their objections weren't entirely unreasonable. The weapon represented a philosophical shift that challenged decades of naval doctrine. Depth charges, for all their limitations, were proven. They were understood. They created impressive displays that looked effective, even when they weren't. The Hedgehog's silent failure mechanism, the absence of explosions when attacks missed, made some officers uncomfortable. There was no dramatic cascade of detonations to reassure convoy merchant ships that their escorts were actively hunting the enemy. Just silence, or occasionally a single devastating explosion that sent shockwaves through the water and brought up debris and oil. Some destroyer captains complained that the forward firing system required them to steer directly toward the submarine during the attack run, potentially exposing their vessels to torpedo counterfire. This concern, while theoretically valid, ignored the reality that U-boats under continuous sonar tracking rarely had opportunity to set up effective torpedo solutions. The most profound criticism, though rarely articulated openly, touched on something deeper: the morality of creating a weapon so effective it essentially guaranteed death for its targets. Depth charges gave submarines a fighting chance. They could be evaded through skill and luck. The Hedgehog offered no such redemption. A properly executed attack was a death sentence. German submariners nicknamed Hedgehog-equipped destroyers Totenschiffe, death ships, and veterans reported that encounters with these vessels produced terror unlike anything else they experienced in the war. This raises uncomfortable questions that extend beyond the specific technology. In war, is there such a thing as being too effective? Does the Warrior's Code require giving the enemy at least a theoretical chance of survival? Throughout history, weapons considered too cruel have been banned or restricted. Poison gas, expanding bullets, biological agents. Yet the Hedgehog, which arguably removed any sporting chance from submarine combat, faced no such restriction. The parallel to other technological advances is instructive. When the longbow made armored knights obsolete, the feudal aristocracy tried desperately to ban it, arguing it was dishonorable. When machine guns made cavalry charges suicidal, military traditionalists denounced them as cowardly weapons. The pattern repeats throughout history. Those who master existing systems resist innovations that render their expertise obsolete. Yet there's a crucial difference with the Hedgehog. Unlike previous revolutionary weapons, it didn't make war more terrible for everyone. It specifically protected merchant sailors and convoy crews while making life unbearable for submarine crews. This asymmetry matters. The Hedgehog didn't kill indiscriminately. It didn't target civilians. It was a precision tool designed to destroy military vessels engaged in attacking unarmed merchant ships. The German response to the Hedgehog's deployment reveals its effectiveness through negative space. What they didn't do. Throughout the war, German engineers developed increasingly sophisticated submarine technology, schnorkel breathing tubes, advanced battery systems, improved hull designs. They never developed an effective counter to the Hedgehog because no counter existed. You cannot evade a weapon that tracks you continuously and attacks from your blind spot with perfect accuracy. The legacy of the Hedgehog extends far beyond its immediate tactical impact. By mid-1943, the Battle of the Atlantic had turned decisively in favor of the Allies. U-boat losses climbed while merchant ship sinkings plummeted. Admiral Dönitz, who'd promised Hitler that his submarine fleet would starve Britain into submission, withdrew his boats from the North Atlantic in May 1943, tacitly admitting defeat. Multiple factors contributed to this victory: improved radar, better intelligence, increased air cover, more escort vessels, but the Hedgehog stood among the most significant. The weapon established principles that govern anti-submarine warfare to this day. Modern submarine hunters still prioritize continuous contact over blind attacks. Advanced torpedoes and depth charges still use contact detonation rather than timed fuses. The core insight that the Hedgehog embodied, that eliminating uncertainty, transforms tactical possibility into strategic dominance, shapes military thinking across all domains. But beyond the technical legacy, beyond the kill ratios and tactical innovations, The Hedgehog represents something profoundly human: the refusal to accept defeat, the determination to protect the vulnerable, the creativity born from desperate necessity. Those engineers and officers who developed and deployed this weapon weren't motivated by bloodlust or abstract strategic theory. They were motivated by memory of ships burning on the horizon, of survivors pulled from the water with skins sloughing off from burning oil, of young merchant sailors who'd signed up to transport cargo and instead found themselves in history's deadliest battlefield. Consider the merchant mariner, 18 years old, standing on the deck of a Liberty ship in the North Atlantic winter of 1941, watching the convoy's escort destroyers futilely dropping depth charges while another tanker erupts in flames 2 miles away. Consider what hope meant to that sailor. Not the abstract hope of eventual victory, but the immediate hope that his ship might survive the night, that he might see his family again. That's what the Hedgehog truly represents. Not just tactical superiority or technological innovation, but the promise that superior skill and determination could overcome terror, that the men who went in harm's way to keep their nations alive deserved protection, that their lives mattered enough to justify any effort, any innovation, any sacrifice necessary to bring them home. The 90 seconds that a U-boat had from initial Hedgehog launch to impact, those 90 seconds marked more than just a timeline to destruction. They represented the culmination of years of desperate innovation, of countless sailors who died before the weapon existed, of engineers working through the night because they knew each day of delay meant more deaths, of destroyer crews who finally had a weapon worthy of their courage and their cause. Today, the Hedgehog itself is obsolete, replaced by guided torpedoes and sophisticated sonar systems. But walk through any naval museum and you'll find them. Corroded mortars mounted on wooden platforms, small plaques explaining their function. Stop and look closely at those silent weapons. Think about the German submariners who heard that distinctive pattern of splashes, who knew they had 90 seconds to make peace with their god, their memories, their fate. Think about the Allied sailors whose lives these weapons saved, who made it home because somewhere in the North Atlantic, a Hedgehog found its mark. The Battle of the Atlantic was the longest continuous military campaign of World War II. It lasted 204 months. It cost 72,000 lives. The Hedgehog didn't prevent that tragedy. It came too late to save the men already lost. But it helped end the slaughter. It turned the tide. It gave hope to men who'd had none. And in the end, isn't that what we fight for? Not for territory or ideology or abstract principles, but for the simple, profound right to come home, to survive the night, to see another dawn, to have a chance. The Hedgehog gave merchant sailors that chance. It transformed them from victims into survivors. 90 seconds, that's all it took. 90 seconds from launch to impact, from hunter to victory, from hope to confirmation. Those 90 seconds changed the war. They saved thousands of lives. They exemplify human ingenuity, determination, and the refusal to accept defeat. And they remind us that sometimes the difference between victory and defeat, between survival and death, between hope and despair, comes down to a single innovation, a better idea, a weapon that works when nothing else will. The Hedgehog worked, and because it worked, sailors came home, nations survived, and freedom endured.